There is a hidden insurance crisis in California that not many people talk about. As of now, about 9,000 foster children could be taken from their homes due to an insurance crisis facing foster family agencies.
Most of us just go about our daily lives not even thinking about all of the kids who are struggling.
Today, we sit down with California's Assemblyman Isaac Bryan, who himself was a foster child. He'll give us his unique perspective on the child welfare system in California. He'll also share with us his personal journey of overcoming adversity from being a struggling student to a rising political star in the state.
We moved a lot growing up. You can imagine taking care of 13 children. You go where the work is. I went to 3 elementary schools, I went to 3 high schools. I have more siblings who are unhoused or incarcerated than who have college degrees. The idea that at 29 years old, I could be a member of the California State Assembly was unbelievable to folks in my family.
I'm Sian Korami. Welcome to California Insider. Isaac, it's great to have you on. Welcome.
It's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
We want to talk to you about a few important issues. One of them is the foster care. There's a silent crisis in this space. There's about 9,000 foster kids that could potentially lose their home if the insurance issues are not solved. Can you tell us what's happening?
But that silent crisis of the child welfare system is broader than just the insurance concerns. Most folks don't think about children in foster care unless you've lost custody of your child or you're a foster parent trying to make a difference. Most of us just go about our daily lives not even thinking about all of the kids who are struggling. I mean, there's many instances in which a kid falls into foster care. Sometimes you could lose custody of your child. Other times you could have lost custody of a child previously, and so the child welfare system might take custody immediately at birth. You might lose custody temporarily. Maybe you got incarcerated or you were unable to care for the child in the moment. Sometimes you can get pulled over and have a child in the back seat and be pulled over for a DUI or something and lose custody of your child. Sometimes, though, there are mothers who give birth to a child and decide and know immediately that I can't raise the child and voluntarily give the child up to either a private or public foster care agency. And it's all of those conditions that lead to children coming into contact with that system, and that entire system has to be maintained, uplifted, publicly supported, and insured.
But now they're losing their insurances because now kids are suing, right? And because there's some level of abuse, and then the lawsuits are costing significantly higher than before, right?
Well, and you're seeing that beyond just the child welfare system. You're seeing that across the entire juvenile justice system, anywhere with our young people. In fact, if you look at LA County, the kids who are in the probation halls and the probation camps, those lawsuits are stacking up into the billions. The County of Los Angeles is going to pay billions of dollars for abuses to children who have been in probation custody. I think that's also not uncommon across the board. Children who are vulnerable, children who are at risk, children who have been abused in the past are just as likely to be abused by these systems that are meant to help them. It's why we've got to continue to invest in keeping families together, not separating kids unnecessarily, right? Nobody goes into the child welfare system for a better outcome. Like many of our institutions, they are doing the best they can to provide in the best ways they can, but the ways that we take care of children in California is to build thriving and healthy families. Stop funneling children from poverty into the child welfare system to begin with, and then questioning why that system is imperfect. Yeah, I gave some examples earlier, but it could be teenage mothers who can't raise their children, which is the case of my biological mother. It could be issues of a child welfare case starting on a family unnecessarily and the county department deciding to remove somebody from their home. It could be cases of abuse where you absolutely have to remove a child from the home. There are many instances that could lead to a child becoming in contact with the child welfare system, but many of those reasons are often rooted in poverty, a lack of resources, a lack of familiar and community support, or an inability of the system to find a better placement with kinship care, other extended family members, or some sort of relative placement that still keeps a family together.
And what are the impacts of that?
We see those impacts across a child's life. If you come into contact with the child welfare system, you are more likely to underperform in school. You are more likely to enter the juvenile justice system. You are more likely to enter the adult penal system. You are more likely to have diminished lifetime earnings. less likely to complete college. All of these things stack on top of each other just by virtue of having ever been a foster child. And that's why it's so important to get some of these things right at the onset. But if we don't, to recognize that the children who have entered our child welfare system are going to need that support through all of these other systems, or we're going to be paying for it on the back end. In my opinion, it's better to invest in our young people when they're in crisis and when they need us, rather than invest in their incarceration later down the line.
So essentially focusing on them, like when first you are saying that we should not let them get there to the system.
Yeah, start on struggling families. I mean, we know the kind of community outcomes that lead to an increased presence of children in the child welfare system. In fact, if you mapped out the top zip codes that have children who come from that neighborhood who end up in foster care, you would also see those are the same zip codes that have the highest poverty rates, right? The highest unemployment, the lowest home ownership rates, the highest rates of incarceration, the fewest jobs. All of these things compound on each other. And I think something we often miss is that these issues are intersectional. So if you want to improve the conditions of life for our children, you've got to start by improving the conditions of life in struggling communities.
What if, when people end up in the system, what are your thoughts on the system as a whole?
That the system has to be rooted in care and opportunity. That is what I've been working on legislatively the last several years, to find features of the system that are exacerbating the problem and removing those features, and redesigning the child welfare system so that it fulfills its rightful mission by producing outcomes that are good for families, but especially good for the children who come into contact with it.
What did you see in this system? What is there that's broken that most of us probably don't know?
Yeah, I'll give you an example of something that we changed that had national implications. If you lose custody of your child to the child welfare system, so the county takes your children for whatever the reason, you could also be charged child support to the county for having, yes, you have to pay the county for having custody of your children now. And as we talked about earlier, you probably lost custody of your children for a number of reasons, but poverty is usually one of those driving reasons, right? Your inability, you can't afford to pay the county these child support arrears. And that's what the data showed us through the years. We've been doing this since the 80s, by the way. And what we found was that every dollar that the county spent trying to collect money from you, they only got 17 cents back. So in other words, charging you child support and then trying to collect was cost inefficient. It was wasting county resources, and these were resources that could have been invested in producing good outcomes for these children. So we wrote a piece of legislation my first year to stop charging families for taking their children.
So they're trying to charge, we've been trying to charge the families, but we're spending a lot of money of our time and resources to charge them, but
not getting it back.
Not getting it back.
Yeah, so I'll spend $1 trying to get money from you and only get 17 cents back. That's not good government. It's not smart government, it's not efficient government, it's wasteful. So if we stop doing that, just stop charging you and stop going after it, we would save money. We'd be cost positive the second year. And so we wrote a piece of legislation to stop the counties from doing that. Why go after poor families who have lost their children to try to pay for the system? If those families had the resources, they'd still have their children. And so we wrote a piece of legislation to end that practice. When we did that, the federal government changed the rules for the rest of the country. Counties are no longer required to do that because the original rules came down from the federal government that required you to do this. And then we went a step further. We cleared the backlog of debt. There was over $400 million in outstanding debt. The problem is for these poor families who couldn't pay this debt, it was impacting your credit score, your ability to get a home, all of the other things that having bad credit do to you because you couldn't afford these child support arrears. But if we just cleared the backlog and stopped doing this going forward, not only are we helping poor families, we're saving the government money it can invest in these children who need it.
Now, can you walk us through what are some of the things that the children can be taken away from the family? Because some people argue this is a tricky place. Like sometimes it might be unjust, sometimes it's...
There are instances of real harm that occur in families. There's real trauma and abuse that children go through, and those children eventually become adults who have children themselves. And we see these cycles compound and reciprocate. But we also know the system is not completely race neutral or poverty neutral. and certain claims of neglect in others can be substantiated simply because of where a family lives or what a family looks like. In fact, there's been an effort to start this process of kind of blind removals, where when the county is making a decision on whether to remove a child, they remove things like the race of the family and other kind of conditions from the file. So you're looking just at the facts and not able to, you don't even have to question your own biases because they're not there anymore. That's a process that I believe many counties across California have started to embrace, places across the country. It's something we're looking at statewide so that we can reduce kind of these racialized outcomes where children are being removed unnecessarily and focusing only on the cases where you absolutely have to find an alternative placement. And even then, when you have to find an alternative placement, to start looking for immediate family members. Is there someone in the network of family of this young person who's willing to step up and be that foster family, whether it be temporary and permanent? And we see that happen in a lot of instances, and all of those are better outcomes than putting children through the child welfare system.
Is there part of the process to check for family members, or no? Does it directly, the counties will have to, when the kids get removed?
We have made that part of the process. And we've also written legislation to encourage counties that have a better relative placement rate to consult with counties that have a poorer relative placement rate. We should be sharing best practices on how to find family members, if at all possible, because we know the data shows very clearly that produces better outcomes for the young people. We just spent decades not doing it. Because when somebody's in crisis, you know, you're immediately thinking about how do I end this crisis? But you've got to be thinking both in the short term and in the long term. And that's what's made our system so harmful for so many, is that we haven't thought holistically about the continuum of care, not just when I remove you or find an alternative placement for you, but all the way through your lifespan.
So offering the family members to become the foster parents, is that the thought?
It's definitely one of the thoughts, yes. Family placements produce better outcomes than the system.
And what about the rest of the system? Once the kids come in, what is the system, what is it like?
Yeah, I think it's full of compassionate and thoughtful and important foster families and foster parents. People who couldn't have children of their own or chose not to, or people who had children of their own but wanted to help children in need, like my mother. My mother was a foster parent for 26 years. My mother and father, they had over 200 foster children come through the home, and they adopted 9 of us. They were crazy, good crazy. They believed they could make a difference one child at a time. And I think the system is full of compassionate foster families like that, but it's also full of need and neglect. There's not enough placements and places for children to be, and there's also this harmful situation when we don't have a placement for a kid, where we often use the juvenile justice system to become your home for a temporary period of time. And that's something we've got to end as well. We've got to detangle the dependency system, the child welfare system, and the juvenile justice system, because we've got countless crossover youth who end up touching both of them, but it's more related to the fact that the need is so great and our resources are so low than them being bad kids.
So we don't have the space? Is that we're having them in the juvenile justice system, or?
That's absolutely right. We don't have enough homes in the community. We don't have enough foster families. We don't have enough places that are rooted in care and support for young people. And some of the infrastructure that we do have for young people is systems of incarceration.
That doesn't make sense, right?
It doesn't make any sense. There's absolutely no reason we should treat it this way. But it speaks to how big of a problem this is, and I think it's why we've got to talk about the root, like we were doing earlier, keeping families together. If you can do that, if you can build healthy and thriving communities and support families when they need it most, you save taxpayers in the long run, you save the children a tremendous amount of trauma, and you don't end up with areas where the need is so great that you just don't know how to fill it.
I think kids in juvenile hall that haven't really committed crime, or they're not bad kids or troublemakers, like, doesn't it cause them to get on the wrong path?
Absolutely, and it's stigmatizing at the very least, right? And we see it a lot for our young girls of color, black girls in particular, where they've not committed any kind of heinous crimes. They're just tough kids who've been traumatized and abused in many different ways and are stuck in our county systems, child welfare systems, looking for help and support, and we're struggling to provide everything that they need. So they're acting out like all young children do, but we criminalize them, we stigmatize them, and we put them on the track that is one that causes more harm for them and for community, instead of investing in the kind of pathways that lead for them to build healthy and thriving families of their own.
Now, you mentioned your background, your mother. Can you explain to us a little bit more?
Yeah, so my biological mother was 16 when she got pregnant with me. She survived a sexual assault that resulted in a pregnancy. And she decided to exercise her options of choice, and in this case, she chose to give birth to me, but to give me up at birth. I went to one foster home, and in my second foster home, I was adopted, the Bryan family. And the Bryan family did foster care for 26 years. I was their fourth adopted child. My biological mother always thought I was their last adopted child, but actually they continued to do foster care all through my childhood. And so I have a number of siblings who were at one time were my foster sibling. I have a number of foster siblings who stayed with us for a period of time, sometimes for years, and then went to another foster home or reunified with their biological family. I have one foster brother who eventually became my nephew because my sister adopted him. That is the kind of love and compassion that we experienced in our house. My mom is one of those people who believes that we all have a responsibility to do what we can to uplift others, and she knew she had a special talent for making a young person feel loved and seen, and she wanted to spread that as far as she could, and she instilled that in all of us. All we knew growing up was how to take care of each other, right? And you know, there was never this individual focus. We knew that, you know, whether it was meals, how we slept, you know, how we went to school, it was always about more than just you. You had to look out for your brothers and your sisters and your foster brothers and sisters, and I think that's something that has carried with me my whole life, and then something I bring to elected office.
We are honored to be sponsored by Shenyun. I've been attending Shenyun performances every year as they change the choreography and music. Shenyun takes you back in time to the magical world of ancient China with unique blend of brilliant dancing, beautiful costumes, and legends coming to life. Overall, it's a very meaningful performance with a lot more than just entertainment to offer. Make sure to go see it this year. Go to shenyun.com and book your tickets today. I highly recommend it.
People nowadays go to the doctors, the psychiatrists for pills, for antidepressants. This is the antidepressant, the best.
I knew it was going to be good. It's a billion times better than I even thought it would be.
I've heard people say, you don't want to miss this, and I would fully agree.
I'm going to tell everyone to come see it. You have to.
Definitely going to come back next year.
Totally inspirational. You have to go see this.
It's a once-in-a-lifetime must-see that will change their lives forever.
Now, how did you decide to run for office?
Yeah, I had been doing a lot of community work for a number of years. And I was political science student of the year my senior year in high school. And I remember sitting my junior year in high school watching Barack Obama be inaugurated. And it was a powerful moment for me because up until that point in my life, I was pretty sure I was going to play basketball forever. I certainly wasn't good enough to play basketball forever, but at that age, we all believe that we are. And when I saw a black man become president of this country, it was a powerful reflection of what I could be. And I started to care about politics more, and I became a political science major in college, and then I got my master's in public policy, and I just wanted to know more about how these systems work. Also, the outcomes I often talk about when you are touched by the child welfare system, even if you're adopted in my case, the outcomes are not always positive. You see poor performance in school, you see a greater likelihood of the juvenile justice system, a greater likelihood of homelessness and incarceration, and we saw that in my family, right? My mother has 13 children, 9 of us adopted. I have siblings who are unhoused. I have siblings who are incarcerated. I saw the way problems for a young person could lead to lifetime outcomes of struggle, and I wanted to change that. That's why I studied public policy. That's why I went to school all of those years, and then I got to working. I worked for the mayor of Los Angeles. I worked for a state elected official. I worked on some campaigns. I did research. I always believed you need three things to make a difference. You need a community that cares, you need courageous elected officials, and you need good data and evidence and research. Combine those things, you can make a difference. So I organized community, I worked at the university and produced good research, and then I became the third piece, which is hopefully a courageous elected official. And my hope is to put all those things together here in office to make positive changes.
Now, can you tell us about growing up in school? How were you doing in school?
I was not a great student. We moved a lot growing up. You can imagine taking care of 13 children. You go where the work is. I lived in multiple different states. Lived in California since I was 11 or 12 years old. This has been where I've been the longest. This is home to me. But I went to 3 elementary schools. I went to 3 high schools. That kind of instability, in addition to figuring out who you are, and all of those things culminated to me being a terrible middle school student in particular. When I was in middle school, I was suspended 6 or 7 times for fighting, mostly. I didn't graduate in the middle school ceremony, and I remember it's because you needed a 1.0 in language arts and math. And I had an F and a D, which is a 0.5. And so I was not allowed to walk with other kids across the stage. And so I remember clearly the day that they were doing the rehearsals for the ceremony, and I had to sit in the classroom. And there was only about 2 of us that had to sit in the classroom. And that hit me in a number of different ways, but it actually made me feel like maybe I wasn't smart. When I went to high school, I focused mostly on sports, and I was able to keep a 2.0 pretty flat until my junior year, when I started to connect all of these dots. And my basketball coach spoke some wisdom into me, and my last 2 years of high school, A's and B's, honor roll. I dual enrolled at the community colleges and got A's in college coursework while I was in high school. I was political science student of the year. I had retaken every class I did poorly in previously, so my high school transcript is something special. You'll see an F in an English class and then an A in the same class later. But ultimately, I graduated with a 3.0 and a journey, and that's what led me to college.
How did you do that? Was it because you studied more, or was it you weren't applying yourself? How did you manage to turn it around that drastically?
I think I got many chances, for one. You know, I never got in the kind of serious academic or school trouble that led to me getting into bigger trouble, like getting arrested or anything like that. I had people who believed in me, even after I failed out of middle school. My family believed in me. I had that basketball coach. He was Coach David Smith. He was a serious mentor for me. He cut me my senior year. He didn't let me play. And the reason he didn't let me play is because I was almost ineligible my junior year. And he encouraged me to be my best self, to apply myself in a different way, to see beyond what the world told me I could be, what I had internalized as who I could be, and to start to find out who I wanted to be. And I think that's ultimately what shifted it for me academically. I guess I always had the potential. I just didn't have the right network of support to unlock that potential. But the right folks came at the right time, and in college, the right folks showed up that helped me make it to graduate school as well.
How did you get the idea to get involved in public service?
I never wanted to be an elected official. I didn't believe in elected officials growing up. One, I never met any elected officials, right, as a kid. I don't come from a legacy family of elected officials. And, you know, especially in college, I was really kind of rebelling against the system, right? Seeing so many things that seemed to remain constant no matter who was in power, right? Those kinds of things frustrated me in my younger years. But as I got older, as I started doing community work, as I started doing research, I started to recognize that the right people in the right positions can make a difference. It might be a small difference in a city or in a county. It might be a large difference across the country, but the right people with the right attitude, with the right heart and care for service can make a difference. And I think that's ultimately why I ran. I ran to try to be one of those people that gives others hope and a system that sometimes can deprive us of that or make us feel hopeless.
And did you think that could happen? Like, your family members, what did they think of?
Not at all. You know, I'm one of the handful of people who even thought about stepping on a college university in my family. I have more siblings who are unhoused or incarcerated than who have college degrees. The idea that at 29 years old I could be a member of the California State Assembly was unbelievable to folks in my family. They're beyond proud. But I work incredibly hard, and I work with the same kind of compassion and passion that my mother has shown taking care of children for over 2 decades. And I think that resonated with the community, and that love in the community feeds back into me. And we're kind of doing it with each other. I do the work to give folks in the community hope. Folks in the community are taking care of each other that give me hope. And I think it's that shared responsibility that's how we make a difference.
Give us some moments that give you hope when you're in the community.
Oh man, every year, for example, I do an event, we call it Christmas in the Park, in Leimert Park, which is a historic black neighborhood in Los Angeles. And many organizations come together, and in fact, you know, this December we're wrapping thousands of toys. Most toy drives, you know, people just give out the toys, but I know that unwrapping the toy is the gift on Christmas, right? It almost doesn't matter what's in it. It's that mystery, it's that surprise. That's what you're going to sleep Christmas Eve thinking about. And so we wrap thousands of toys, and we turn a community building into Santa's workshop. And different people from all parts of the neighborhood volunteer their time to wrap these toys. They bring in toys, and then we pick a day to go to the park and give them out, and give out food and clothes and diapers and all of the things that you need. And nobody's getting paid to do this work. It's a labor of love and, you know, belief that it's our responsibility to help others if we can. That gives me tremendous hope. But we have examples all throughout the year of people stepping up to fill the need for others. There are foster moms across the district who give me hope, who remind me of my mother. There are first responders and firefighters who are fighting wildfires across California and in Malibu and parts of Los Angeles that give me hope. There are clergy who are reminding, you know, their congregations to remain hopeful and to remain a diligent part of the community, no matter how dark times seem to get for all of us. There's young children who, watching them play, knowing that they don't know anything about the world, they don't know anything about what's going on in our elections, but they have this boundless joy and compassion for each other, sharing and caring. That gives me hope. I'm one of those people who believes in the best in humanity. I believe that we genuinely share a collective soul and purpose as humanity, and it's our job as elected officials to tap into the best of that, to encourage the best in that, to incentivize the best in that, and that's what I'm working towards.
Now, Isaac, you're pretty young for being in the Assembly, and you've had major roles. And how is it being in your shoes and representing a decent-sized district in LA?
Yeah, I've got 500,000 people who are counting on me. I was the youngest Assembly member from Los Angeles when I was elected at 29. I'm 32 now. But in just that short period of time, I've also served as the chair of the Elections Committee. I've served as a whip for the Democratic Caucus. I've served as the majority floor leader for the Democratic Caucus. And I think in all of those roles, the expectations have always grown and the responsibility has grown. But I think my ability to lead in these different capacities suggests that both the community believes in me and also my colleagues believe in me. And making change is not something you can do by yourself. And so I'm grateful for my colleagues who have invested in the changes that I've tried to make the last few years and have joined in that collective fight to make California a better place for everybody.
And what is your district like? There's a lot of diversity in your district, isn't it?
Yeah, I think I have the greatest district in California, and so do the people who live in it. But it is a very diverse and special district. It is majority young people. It has historic black communities. The Crenshaw Corridor, the largest black block party in the country, is the Taste of Soul. 300,000 people on Crenshaw Boulevard, that's in my district. It also has historic Jewish neighborhoods like Pico Robertson. It has Miracle Mile, Culver City, Mid-City, the West Side, Palms, Mar Vista, Cheviot Hills, Beverly Wood. It's got 3 movie studios, Fox Studios, Amazon Studios, Sony Studios. It is really a diverse and special district full of art and culture and community. And what I love most about it is it doesn't matter which corner of the district you live in, you know that you share a belief in a strong community, a thriving community that is echoed by one of your neighbors in another corner of the district. That's what makes it a special place. That's what makes it special for me to represent.
And now, do you have a message for younger people, especially people that are in foster care? Or do you have a message for them?
Never believe that you can't make a difference, or that this moment in your life, whatever you're going through, is the last moment you will have. Every struggle, every hurdle that you overcome is a piece of power for you to leverage to make a change, a positive change in your life and in the lives of the community you care about. So stay focused and don't give up. I think that's a message that we can all hold deeply. It gets dark sometimes, where you don't believe that things can ever be better. But you have to know that they can, and you have to know that you have a role in making those things better.
Now, for Californians, you know, it's been tough. The standard of living is going down, the cost of living has gone up, the incomes are not going up as much as the costs. Yeah. Do you have a message for Californians?
Yeah, I think we've got to do that all we can to make sure that every community in California is thriving. In my home city of Los Angeles, it is hard for me to experience afternoons in some of the most expensive homes I've ever seen, then drive back down to the home that my wife and I are renting for way too much on Crenshaw Boulevard, and to drive past people who have no home at all sleeping on our streets. All of this happening in the same city. There's no reason for that. We can do better as a state. We can bring down the cost of living. We can increase the wages that folks earn. We can balance out the scales of innovation and productivity and basic human decency and economic compassion. We just have to have that will. And I have that will, and I know many of my colleagues do too. It's the crisis we've got to face right now, and it's a crisis that has been staring us in our face for as long as people have been sleeping on our sidewalk.
California Assemblymember Isaac Bryan, it was great to have you on California Insider.
It was really, really great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Let us know what your thoughts are on the foster care system in California. You can always reach out to me at siamak@californiainsider.com. Remember, I read all of your comments and your emails. We'll see you next time.